Hi, everyone. Thank you very much for joining us in this panel about React Native at scale. My name is Nicola Corti. I'm an Android engineer working at Meta on the React Native core team, and I'm more than excited to welcome you all with all of our panelists here on stage live at the Mobile at Scale conference. Before we begin, I actually would like to understand from the viewers of the live stream, what is your experience like? Do you know React Native? Do you know what it is? So we do have like a poll that will pop up just above the chat window, and make sure you complete it. And complete it, close it, and like this will help us just to get a little bit of an understanding of if you know React Native, if you use React Native, and so on. And make sure you close it because you will need the chat, because this panel is going to be interactive. So we do have some warm-up questions, but we want you, folks from the audience, to type your questions, ask all of your doubts to all those amazing panelists. So I already introduced myself, and now I want to hand over to the folks here that are joining me on stage to tell us a little bit about what do they do, what's their role, and most importantly, we will also hear now during the introduction, how is React Native used within their organization. We do have a lot of industry leaders out here, so I'm happy to hand it over to Kevin from Meta to start.
Hello, everyone. I'm Kevin. I'm an engineering manager at Meta, working on the React org. My focus has been the React Native architecture. So if you heard the term new architecture, yeah, my team worked on that since a few years ago. For Meta, our org focuses on building core foundation of React, React Native, and Relay, all the three. And we aim the internal developers, all the React developers in the company, and also for external community. So we enable developers internally to build in different platform, different apps. So we have the main Facebook app, a bunch of other mobile apps in the company, desktop apps, and also VR apps. So that's a bit about me.
Awesome, Kevin. Thank you very much. Up next, we have Khalef from Microsoft.
Yes, hi everyone. So I'm Khalef. I'm an engineering manager at Microsoft, more specifically in the Office division. And so what we do with React Native is we own and maintain the React Native for desktop platforms, specifically Windows and Mac OS, and some open source tooling that help people build React Native experiences. And internally, we use React Native to light up, like several experiences across our mobile and desktop platforms. We have two types of applications, some that are built from the ground up using React Native, which we usually call greenfield apps. And then we have existing native application where we embed views that we use to light up like very specific scenarios. And this is usually called brownfield applications. But today it's used across, Office, Teams, Xbox, Outlook, Power Apps, even the Windows operating system, and a lot of other applications that we have internally. So yeah, that's a little bit about me.
Awesome. Thank you very much, Khalef. Up next, we have Mustafa from Shopify.
Hi, everyone. Mustafa here. I'm a director of engineering at Shopify. I've been doing mobile for almost 15 years now, and I currently lead the team building the main Shopify app and also responsible for application security for all our mobile apps. At Shopify, we went all in on React Native in 2020, and we've migrated all of our apps. So the main Shopify app, point of sale, inbox, balance, and shop have all been migrated to React Native. And we used a combination of greenfield and brownfield approaches to do that. And it's now the default way of building mobile apps at Shopify.
Awesome. And finally, we do have Alfonso from Coinbase.
Hi, everyone. My name is Alfonso. I'm a software engineer at Coinbase. I'm part of the DevX team. I focus on providing internal solutions to facilitate building, testing, releasing React Native mobile apps. At Coinbase, our three main apps, the Coinbase app, Wallet, Prime, use React Native, and React Native is the paid road for all of our apps.
Awesome. So, folks, we got the results from the poll. We got like a significant amount of people that are new to React Native, and then someone that is familiar with it. Let's say 70% it's new. So I want to stress how important it is that now you use the chat to ask questions to our panelists about how React Native is used at scale. Like, you have this unique opportunity to ask companies that are using React Native on products that are used by millions or billions of users. So don't miss this opportunity. We're going to warm up the stage with some questions, but please make sure you ask your own so we can make it a little bit more interactive. So as I said, let's warm up the stage with the first question, which is, okay, folks, so you all are using React Native in your products, and I'm sure that at some point someone was sitting down in a meeting and was deciding, okay, we want to invest on cross-platform. Like cross-platform is the way forward. There are multiple solutions for cross-platform. React Native is not the only one. There are others like known solutions out there in the market. Now, I want to ask you, what was the key factor that resulted in your organization picking React Native? And Mustafa, like from Shopify, I know all of your mobile apps are basically in React Native. Do you have something to share about it?
Yeah, sure. For us, the biggest reason for looking into this area was the difficulty in maintaining feature parity. At our scale, like we had native teams building Android and iOS versions of the same app, and just keeping them in sync was taking a lot of time and effort. So we started looking at cross-platform solutions, and React Native was one of them. We picked React Native for a bunch of different reasons. The main one was the maturity of the framework and the ecosystem, and also the familiarity with the language and tooling. We have a very deep expertise in web tooling, so it was a logical extension of that. So that made us choose React Native.
Got it. I want to ask like the same question also to Khalef, because in your introduction you mentioned that React Native is also used in Windows, like in the operating system, and let's stress how, like, you know, when people think about React Native, they always think about like Android and iOS, but actually it allows to reach a variety of different platforms. So how comes that Microsoft picked React Native?
Yeah, so some of the reasons are similar to what Mustafa just said. Like when we were evaluating cross-platform solutions, we saw that React Native was a very mature platform. Of course, like really early on, the desktop implementations were not there, so we added it because we ship a lot of desktop platforms. But the maturity was really important. We had a lot of web developers who wanted to port experiences over to native platforms, and they already had experience with JavaScript. They understood the tooling, so it was much easier for them to build these applications using React Native than going native. And then the other aspect that there is that, especially in the case of brownfield applications, we wanted to use modern UI frameworks, but at the same time we need the UI to look exactly the same within those older applications. And the ability that React Native provides us to embed our own rendering framework was extremely important to us. That's what allowed us, for example, when you were mentioning the Windows operating system, Nicola, that's what allowed us to build some of the experiences in the newer versions of Windows using React Native. But when people actually look at it, there's no way for them to tell that this is actually not using native code directly. And then another reason was just the performance characteristics. There are places where we have applications that need to, that we have experiences that need to launch very quickly. And there's a lot of ways where React Native actually allows us to hit those performance requirements that we had.
Awesome. Thank you very much for sharing your insight, Khalef. I want to touch on like one of the fundamental principles of React Native, which you folks can see if you head over to reactnative.dev. The promise, like the motto, is learn once, write anywhere. No, like whenever we hear like CTOs or like technical leader talking about let's go cross-platform because I'm gonna write it up only once, no, and like save half of the time. Well, you folks are like real example if that promise holds true or not. So now I would like to ask Kevin, give us a little bit of perspective from Meta on how React Native effectively has impacted the productivity of our engineers.
Yeah, this is very interesting topic because React is about portability of expertise as well. And a lot of developers started at Meta. Maybe they're like a UI engineer or a web developer or iOS or Android. I mean, I am an iOS engineer at start, and learning learning React once means that you can apply this when building multiple products. And I think it's about features in different apps too. So we do focus on building the building blocks, the infrastructure, so that product teams, they just focus on building the product and they focus on figuring out whether the product makes sense, iteration, velocity of that. And the side effect of that is that the same product may be able to just run this as is in different app or different platforms. So we have people building for Android maybe, and then they pull that experience to VR or iOS, vice versa. It may not be the same exact code, but the portability of the expertise help developers really move fast in the company.
Awesome. Like I can totally see that as a Meta engineer, like people jumping over between boundaries. This is so amazing, really. I want to hear also a little bit from Alfonso at Coinbase. How has React Native impacted productivity of your engineers?
Of course, yeah. Between let's see. So besides the feature parity that Kevin mentioned, and I think one key point is that if your company was already using React, for example, then obviously most of the engineers working in, like, say, web can learn easily to go into mobile, and then you have a lot of resources that can move around. That's like the promise from React, right? Or React Native. Something very powerful that we found was you can, since most of the changes or most of the features that we make are in JavaScript, and it's slow to build React or like native apps locally, we can leverage that and use or cache the native builds. And so it has increased our productivity by a lot just by caching native builds, and just our engineers will just download that native build and just compile TypeScript, which is way faster. And anyway, that's
I can totally relate to that. I've been working as an Android engineer for like 6 or 7 years, and the speed boost you get from not building native every time is just like incomparable. So I can totally see how that impacted you. I want to ask the same questions also to Khalef, and specifically, I know Microsoft has a solution called Code Push that allows to deliver updates over the air. So I'm wondering, like, no one has mentioned this yet. I suppose this has improved your productivity at Microsoft, but can you tell us to which extent, Khalef?
Yeah. So we have Code Push is one of the technologies, but there's also a few others that we have internally. But the general idea is that it allows us to push, like bits in real time over to user machines that are running our products. And the fact that we switched over to React Native and that we had a stable, interface between our experiences and the products, they allowed us to rev both of them independently. And what we do often is when we're running experimentation, for example, we can push different versions of those JavaScript bundles over to different users. That has allowed us to decrease our delivery time for new features or experiments significantly, like in the order of. I think in the case of Xbox, for example, it would take them about more than a month to release new versions of the whole native stack, and they could release React Native experiences to Xbox applications within about 10 minutes. So in production, so that was a pretty significant boost to our delivery mechanism.
And that's awesome to hear, especially if you consider like the user, like the size of the user base that you folks have at Microsoft is really impressive to hear.
Yeah.
So we do have some live questions, and I'm leaning towards prioritizing those just to make the conversation a little bit more like spicy and live. So quick reminder for everyone, make sure you write your questions there. I will be picking them first. And you can also upvote messages. So if we start having more, we will be answering first the one that receive more votes. So the first one is from Jatin. I hope I pronounced your name correctly, which is, do you guys use Jetpack Compose and Swift UI in your native modules in React Native? Who wants to take this one? Kevin, I believe you have some insights on this, right?
Yeah, definitely. So Swift UI and Jetpack Compose provide a lot of different APIs, kind of similar to React. So we did some research back in the day just to understand like what is the internals a little bit, and then we actually did some experiment or exploration on like how easy is it to create a integration, like as if it's a Jetpack Compose component or Swift UI component. So at least for Jetpack Compose, it was somewhat possible. We didn't really pursue into the very great detail. It's more about like understanding our limits in the React Native framework and understanding how easy it is to integrate like a different rendering engine. So yeah, it is possible. We just don't use it within the core. It is an option of for people who would like to explore that as well.
Got it. We do have another question, which is somehow like directed to folks at Meta, and I will keep on asking you, Kevin. And this is a bit spicy. Like I've been asked these same questions multiple times, but I really want to hear your thoughts. Which is like, why was a Threads app not built with React Native?
Yeah, excellent question. At Meta, we believe that products, teams, or organization, they have their own priority. They have their own choice of tech stack. Instagram have a lot of underlying infra they have built for many years. Organization who built the new app will need to decide, okay, what is the best use of the infra for that specific product. So I'm not involved in any of the development of Threads. What I believe is that using the same principle, using what allows their engineer to be more productive at that moment for the product needs is probably the best call for a product. So the answer really, it depends on the use case. And I was thinking to talk about that later on the topic of like, what to choose. And then I think the answer, it depends, right? I think organization will have constraints, expertise, or other priorities that might, play into this decision making. So that's what I would say.
I can totally relate on that. It depends is my favorite answer. I think is the classical engineering answer to like those, open-ended questions. I actually want to give a shout out like to Expo. If you folks in the audience are new to React Native, make sure you check out Expo. Is a framework to create React Native apps. And like if your use case is prototyping something, like Expo is the best tool. Like I was impressed by seeing how quick I am by just using tools like that one. But there might be other scenarios where like React Native is not the best solution. So it really depends on what you have to build. So we have another question from the audience. I see now questions are starting to flow, which is something that I really love. It's from Mo, and he or she asks how to make sure that there are clear boundaries between different workflows on a large-scale project with different teams working on it. I'm not entirely sure what you mean here with workflows, but I suppose you work in a big code base with multiple teams collaborating on different features, and how do you make sure that the monorepo or the repository where you work is properly structured so that folks can collaborate and don't step on each other's shoes? So the question is more like organizationally, folks, how do you organize your work? I'm curious to hear from folks. Like I'm sure folks at Microsoft have. I remember seeing this constellation of different monorepos to make code sharing possible. I don't know if Khalef, you have insights to share here.
Yeah, I mean, I can talk a little bit about some of the experiences that we've had. So we we have multiple repos within Microsoft, and one of the challenges that we faced was that we had folks who were building experiences that they wanted to port to different applications as seamlessly as possible. So think of it as an example. Like we have features where you can see the contact information of people, their ID, their email address, their organizational chart, and things like that. And those experiences are useful in Teams, in Outlook, in other and in other apps like other Office apps. So we had a challenge where when people were building those experiences, they tried to port it to different apps, they were missing functionality. Like an API was available in one application, it wasn't available in another, and that created a lot of friction for seamlessly implementing these. So one of the things that we did was just try to come up with a shared SDK that was an SDK that was agnostic of the application. So you could call into it, and then within the application that you're going to call, we will provide the specific implementation for it. That allowed people to move their experiences quickly between those applications. We also built, like generic test apps that could live in any of those repos, so that at the very least you had the ability to test your experience once before you migrate it over. So that's one of the ways that we did handle the problem of multiple repos within our organization.
Awesome! Shout out to React Native Test App from the folks at Microsoft. I know a lot of libraries have been using it to sort of make sure that the library works with all the various React Native releases. It's such a great tool. Thanks, you folks, for investing on it. So I'll jump over on another question that we have prepared, but I again invite everyone to send live questions over. We're gonna pick the next one from the live chat. What I want to ask is, what is the biggest challenge your organization has faced when you consider adopting React Native at scale? We know there are like big topics in the React Native ecosystem, like big challenges that every company experience to some extent. So I'm curious to hear your specific story. Like, what was the biggest, I don't know, pushback, or like the biggest challenge, like the biggest project that you have to face when dealing with React Native? Mustafa, how about you tell us a little bit from Shopify? Sure.
So the biggest challenge that we faced was not technical. It was more of a culture and people issue. We've spent like years building a really strong native team, and we had like really strong native engineers who had spent years building that expertise, and having everybody take that, but also then start learning a new technology, a language, and a framework was there was a good amount of pushback around that. But the way that we overcame was that, like, I think React Native, this was around 4 years ago. So back then, React Native had, like, people had preconceived notions about React Native, about what's possible, what's not, what the performance is like. So we encourage everybody to try it out instead of just relying on blog post on the internet or what they heard from their friends or anything like that. Just like give it a shot and have everybody build some apps in React Native on the side, and then try to make it easier for them to adopt React Native. A lot of friction was around like, okay, I have to spend a lot of time to learn this new technology, but what if we made it super easy for you? Like, you go through this one course and you know everything you need to know to build React Native apps at scale. So once we started doing that, and also we had some issues with some performance issues, so we invested heavily in that side as well, and we built and open source some libraries for that. And after that, most of the people came on board, and now they're happily doing React Native every day. Awesome. Thanks for sharing like your challenges. I'm curious to hear from Khalef again. Like, I think you folks are like maybe also similar to us, have the biggest, diversity in terms of platforms. So yeah, like what's the scope there of the challenges you're facing?
So there was one that is very similar to what Mustafa was describing, where there's a cultural aspect and an expertise aspect that influences the decisions that people take when they pick a platform. In some cases, we had people who just heard about React Native, wanted to get going on it pretty quickly, and they were productive quickly. In some cases, we had native developers who, like really wanted to access the native code and found the JavaScript layer to be a hurdle for them. They didn't enjoy the experience as much. What we did in our case was we also tried to build very easy to get started experiences. So like think of if you're building Office, for example, internally within Microsoft, you have a way where you can very quickly just get a Hello World application stood up. You clone a repo, you build it, there's a task pane that gets created, your Hello World is there. You open VS Code, you start coding, you can change things very quickly, and you get an experience up and running. So we tried to reduce that barrier to entry as much as possible to allow people to prototype and see what they feel about the experience. And in practice, we see that there's a good amount of people who take a dependency on React Native after that. There are others who will choose to stay either with native because they may have libraries that exist already, or they feel the experience allows them to just stay native and build, let's say, on Android and iOS separately. Or we have people that will use web views as well for other reasons. But in general, we found that when it comes to, like helping people adopt React Native, just the ability to get them started quickly was made a huge difference for us. I can talk about another challenge that we had, which is because of the size of the company and the fact that I mentioned earlier, we don't have monorepos. One of the challenges was that we had multiple versions of React Native being used across the company. And that became a challenge because when we had to maintain tools, when we had to share experiences across those apps, it was a challenge. So that's one thing that I'm really happy with now. When we started, a few years ago, releases were not as predictable in React Native, so we couldn't plan when to do our upgrades. But recently, it's been very, very predictable. So we know, roughly every quarter or so, there's a new version coming out, so we can coordinate an upgrade across the company, even if it's happening across multiple repos. And we've seen that be fairly successful, with most people being, at most 1 or 2 releases behind, which makes it much more easier for us to coordinate sharing our experiences.
Awesome. Thank you very much for sharing. I'm curious now to hear from Kevin. And, at Meta, we do have this dual class of challenges, because on one hand, we have users of React Native that feels similar pain as you folks, but also we are building the framework, and the different perspective of, being the framework builder as its own category of challenges. So Kevin can speak a lot about it, I'm pretty sure, right?
Yeah, definitely. So I'm going to talk about the point of view of our org. We built this technology. So the challenge has been, how do we support thousands of developers throughout the company to enjoy the latest and greatest while innovating? So in a way, it's kind of like you change a race car when the race is ongoing, and then you need to keep everything running. So that's kind of the nature of the challenge here. There's a lot of solutions to this, and we really think hard about all the corner cases, the constraints. So it forces us to build a durable solution that works for many use cases, if not all of them. And we focus on that so that nobody else need to do that. Hopefully, all of you can enjoy the benefits the same way that our developers can benefit. So it is a lot of a constraint, and it's about prioritization, about different constraints, and then when things doesn't work, how do you do it? How do you overcome the next blocker? And all of that is part of the play.
Awesome. So talking about building sustainable architectures that work great for everyone, there is one question from the audience which I need to ask you, Kevin. It's from Mo again, and the question is, what is Meta doing to push adoption of the React Native new architecture?
Yeah, internally and externally, there are different set of strategy. Internally, we push the main Facebook app to the latest architecture. So we did that. In the new apps development or like projects on a new different part of the company, we try to push on the latest setup, just so that our team doesn't have to maintain 2 different runtime for the app, and debugging becomes easier, building product becomes less confusing. And we're providing self-service tool, wikis or guidance, so that people who have extra time, they will take their time to upgrade their apps. getting support from us to like ask questions in that. And for external, we are working hard to make it available for many more people outside. And in one of the a few release in the past, like 72, and then like now soon in 73, we have a lot more new architecture or layers that people can adopt. They can try it out, they can provide feedback, and then the whole point is to bring it out there with all the lessons that we have from Meta, so that all of you can enjoy it as well. So yeah, we're actively working on this space, not only for internal but also for external.
Absolutely. If I can add a couple of bits, this year has all been about backward compatibility. So if you see the features that we released in React Native 072, there is one called Fabric Interop that allows you to use old libraries with the new architecture. And similarly in 073, there is going to be more updates on this space. So we're doing, like, as Kevin said, a lot of effort in this space to push the adoption of the new architecture. I do have another spicy question. This time is not from Meta, but it's from Microsoft. So Khalef, this is on you. And folks are asking, Dev is asking, I'm curious why the projects at Microsoft are not using Xamarin, which I believe is not even called Xamarin anymore. But you can tell us.
Yeah. So it's not necessarily that that everyone is using React Native. In fact, like our goal was not to make React Native the single, like cross-platform solution across the company. That would have been completely unfeasible. People actually pick the technology that's suitable for them. So we have people who are also using web views, who are using Electron. I am sure someone out there is using Flutter as well within Microsoft, but it's more. The reason people picked React Native in particular was around, like I can speak on for Office. Like the reason why we picked it for the scenarios that we did was because one, it was the familiarity of our developers with JavaScript was one of the big motivating factors. As well as so Office, we cannot go rewrite Office from scratch. It just would not be practical. And so the ability to embed, so build those brownfield applications was extremely important. But also when we compared to other technologies where we could do that, React Native had very good performance characteristics for some specific scenarios that we cared about. So, like let's say we want something to display very quickly after the application boots, we found that React Native was a suitable way to do that. So it really depends on the team specifically and what they're trying to do. I think across the company we have a breadth of features that use different types of cross-platform technology. The React Native is by far one of the more popular ones.
Awesome. Thanks for clarifying. We're slowly moving towards the end of this panel. So I still want to pick from the live questions because they're really insightful. So there is another one, which is from Dev, and he asks other panelists, what is the benefit of using React Native other than other competitors, so other cross-platform solution? Mustafa, you seem to have some insights on this from Shopify. Have you considered using Flutter or Kotlin multi-platform or web-based solutions? What's your take?
Yeah, there are a bunch of different advantages. We use Kotlin multi-platform as well, but it's for places where it makes more sense. But for React Native in particular, we evaluated a bunch of different options, and the things that stood out for us were two things. One is you don't have to learn a completely new language to start building using React Native. If you're familiar with JavaScript and TypeScript, you can get started, and the learning curve is not too steep. So there's that. The other reason is that you don't have to go all in. You can adopt it piecemeal. So if you have a well-established native app, you can just build a single feature using it and then see how it works and then scale it up if you want to. So that makes the transition much smoother versus dropping everything and trying something new altogether.
Awesome. I see in the chat there are also questions related to Kotlin multi-platform taking over React Native. What's your take on that, Mustafa?
I think it's a very interesting technology. It's a different approach to doing cross-platform development. I also happen to be on the Kotlin Foundation, so I work with that technology as well. But I think The biggest advantage for Kotlin multi-platform, in my opinion, is like if you have a lot of native code already and you want a way to share it with another platform, let's say you have a bunch of Android code that you want to share it with iOS, Kotlin multi-platform is a decent way of doing that. But I think React Native also has its own advantages. Like UI is way easier in React Native, and you can just build once and runs everywhere. So at the end of the day, like my thoughts about all of this is that these are all tools in your toolbox, and you have to pick what works best for you in whatever problem you're trying to solve.
Awesome. So as we are really close to the end of this panel, I want to wrap up with one final question. Like I want to collect your wisdom and advice for folks that are willing to start considering using React Native at scale, as we all do. And the question is from Nate, was a live question, is as someone just getting into React Native and developing hybrid for iOS and Android, what are 3 things that you recommend we keep in mind as we get started? I would love everyone to answer. It might not be 3 things, it might be just 1. So whatever, folks, you are free for all. I will say, I will start with Kevin from Meta. Maybe you can give us some insights or suggestions, and yeah, all the other folks will follow through.
Yeah, at least my experience and the experience of the org has been you need to focus on what your organization needs. Maybe you want to build something very rapidly. Maybe you want to focus on the polish and stuff. A lot of that has parts into the decision making. And one thing is about having the native engineers, because the strength of React Native is the ability to jump into the native platform when you need to. You may not need the same number of native expertise, but having some of them will help. And then once you have the good foundation, you can scale your team and add it, finding the React developers. So again, it depends on the needs, but then the key is that being flexible and allowing people to jump into the native stack if that's what you need.
Awesome. So we go next to Alfonso. Like, what's your take?
Sure. Yeah, no. As we've said here, React Native is very powerful. It allows you to do over-the-air updates, do cross-platform features. I think I have maybe 2 recommendations. One is leverage state-of-the-art tools like Expo, which are very helpful even in the beginning. And to complement what Kevin was saying, React Native, it's still in its core, it's still native. So still invest in native expertise. And that's it.
Awesome. So up next, we have Mustafa from Shopify. Some experience or learnings or takeaways?
Yeah, for sure. So 2 things I would say I recommend companies potentially adopting React Native at scale. One is invest heavily in training. Don't rely on like people going through blog posts and learning things on their own. Just make it easier for people to learn React Native, and it will make everybody's life so much easier. The other thing I would say is invest also very heavily in the developer experience. Make it so easy to adopt React Native that it should be a no-brainer. And once you do that, you just removing friction goes a long way when you're trying to make a shift like this.
Awesome. And Khalef, you have the honor to wrap up this collective wisdom around React Native.
Sure. Yeah. So I would say, I think, I'll echo some of the things that's already been said. I think it's really important to understand if you're trying to build it at scale and you will have developers of different backgrounds, it's really important to understand that background, because the unique needs that they will have is different. Like native developers will be very happy to quickly bridge to native code if they need to write modules that they are going to use. JavaScript developers might find this a little bit more challenging, and even if they can do it, it's not going to lead to a good developer experience for them. So knowing like who you're actually targeting makes a really big difference. In our case, we have a platform team that helps with that. So when we have people who are pure JavaScript developers, we provide them the libraries that they actually need, and that helps them be successful. The other thing I would say is we mentioned Expo, but in general, once you're getting ready to use React Native, like just learn about the richness of the overall ecosystem. because there's a lot of libraries out there. There's a lot of tools that you can leverage that will get you started very quickly, and that you don't have to rebuild yourself. So it's another thing that I would recommend people to do.
Awesome. Thank you very much for sharing so much. I think before we actually call it a day, it might be worth to share some references for the folks. Like, I see there are more questions coming through. If people are interested in getting in touch with the React Native community, what would be your go-to destination? I can definitely mention that the React Native website is reactnative.dev, and we are quite active on the GitHub issue tracker for React Native. But do you folks have recommendations on like communities or forums that you would recommend for folks to look into if they have like more questions or doubts related to React Native, and so they can get them answered?
We run a Discord group for React Native at Shopify, which is open to the public. You can find links for that at the Flashlist GitHub page, and we are in there helping people who are using our React Native open source libraries. But anything else with React Native we'll try and help with that as well.
Awesome. Alfonso, Khalef, do you have other resources to share?
Yeah, so I think for us, we're also pretty active on the GitHub repos that we own. If you ask questions there, we'll be happy to respond. We also have a Twitter feed, React Native MSFT. You can connect with us there as well. I think those would be the main ones.
Awesome. Okay, folks. I want to thank you very much for being with us on stage today.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And I also want to thank everyone in the audience for being live. I hope you really enjoyed the panel, and I hope to see you all at the next Mobile at Scale conference.